Network 98 says, how do you feel about the Stuckman controversy? Okay, this is something that's been going around on the internet for about the past week and a half. Twitter is in a frenzy about it for sure. Chris Stuckman's somebody that I've watched since I was probably about 10, 11, 12 years old. The first movie critic that I ever subscribed to, one of the few that really got me into watching movies at an early age, and one that I tended to go to hear his opinions about stuff before I ever went to see a movie, because it felt like our opinions lined up. I liked his presentation, his personality, the formatting of his videos, everything like that. He became very successful as a critic on YouTube. Obviously, he's got over 2 million subscribers now. But then I think a year or two ago, he made a switch up. He made an announcement saying that he is wanting to become a filmmaker. He's in the process of making his first feature film, which is Shelby Oaks, that's supposed to be coming out this year. And because of that, he didn't want to do anything to jeopardize his relationships with studios for future endeavors, because his current film that he's working on is independently produced. He doesn't have a big studio head over him, but he felt like making reviews about movies he didn't like would really put a negative light on him in the industry and make it harder for him to gain relationships within the industry with bigger studios if he ever got to be in a position in the future to make a film with one of those studios. So he decided, I'm no longer going to talk about the movies I don't like. I'm not going to crap on movies. I'm not going to criticize. I'm only going to talk about the movies that I enjoy, that I appreciate. We're not going to be talking about stuff I don't like, only the stuff that made an impact on me and what I think you should watch too. And he's gone the last year, 2 years doing that exact thing, only talking about movies that he enjoyed and not really giving any criticisms about it, just sort of shining a light on them for what he felt worked with him and what impacted him about those movies. And then Madam Web came out. Universally hated movie, myself included. It's not good. It's laughable, but it's not good. And then Chris Stuckman posts a video with Madam Web in the thumbnail, but then the title of the video says, we have to talk about this, or I have to talk about this, or something like that, something along those lines. And the video itself is not a critique of Madam Web at all, but instead the film industry and studios having way too much supervision and way too much of an overbearing presence over filmmakers, and just kind of interfering with projects as a whole. And it was really just him talking about how filmmakers need more of a path to express themselves, more freedom to express themselves, and that as long as we allow these big studio heads to have such an impact and such interference in these projects, we're not going to get the stories that people wanted to tell. So he goes on this rant, and then there's a clip that's posted on Twitter out of context.
Having seen the film, I'm going to tell you that this is not a movie review of Madam Web. I am not about bashing filmmakers, artists. I know how hard it is to make a movie. I do not know how hard it is to make a movie under the studio system. I was able to make an indie film without a giant corporation breathing down my neck, which is not the privilege that S.J. Clarkson had when she directed Madam Web under Sony, which I can only imagine was monumentally difficult.
And people just went off on him saying, YouTube film critic says you shouldn't critique bad films. That's not what it was at all. They're stringing together a video that he posted a year or two ago talking about where he was no longer going to be talking about movies he didn't like, with the Madam Web thing, calling it hypocritical and saying that, like, if you're a critic but you're not going to talk bad about a movie, you're not a critic at all. The problem is, he already said he no longer wants to identify as a critic. He identifies as a filmmaker. I think the whole thing was entirely blown out of proportion. Say what you want about his stance on things, say what you want about the direction he's taken his channel with, but at the end of the day, that's his decision, and he's made it very clear. So if you don't like it, lump it. You don't have to watch. Now, admittedly, I haven't been watching his channel as much as I once did, just because other film critics I respect and appreciate and watch in the space, I go to them because they're very fair and they're very observant, and they're able to recognize both the good and the bad and kind of come to the conclusion whether or not something is worth your time. But I'll admit, like, if there's a movie that I really enjoy or that I'm looking forward to and I see he posts a review about it, I get a little excited because I know that means he likes it, and I know that typically our viewpoints line up. I think the entire thing was blown out of proportion, and the people blowing it out of proportion seem to be the ones that didn't even watch the video at all. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think it's obvious the direction he's been going for quite some time now. He's made that clear, and if people can't see that, I mean, that's on them. That's on them.